When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadabji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 87, From Survivor of Circumstance to Warrior of Flow. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Inga Ramage. Inga is deeply immersed in the field of personal injuries with over 14 years of dedicated experience. Her journey began as a solo immigrant from Ukraine to the CEO and partner of Prime Healthcare Incorporated, which has been marked by resilience and a commitment to helping individuals affected by accidents. Inga's personal experience with a car accident ignited her passion for understanding the personal injury claims system. Inga has learned the complexities of personal injury, collaborating with medical and assessment centers across Ontario and top personal injury lawyers. Family is at the core of Inga's values and is honored to be a founding member of the Immigrant Women in Business organization, supporting multicultural diversity and empowerment. She believes in the power of lifting others up. She aims to make a positive impact on individuals affected by accidents. Well, hello, Inga. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hi, Salima.
Hi.
It's such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here. I'm actually delighted to have you on as a guest for today's show. And I always like people to know how grateful I am when you come on on this podcast. I'm grateful for your willingness to be here and to tell your story. I usually express this quite often. I'm really humbled to encounter guests like yourself who really give me permission to tap into their vulnerabilities and then draw from their strength and insight. And I'm always admiring the inspiration that gets shared in this space. So it's really incredibly important that we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma. What do you think?
Wow, I am blown away by what you just said. And when you were just sharing my story, the brief bio, and who I am in this world, I got goosebumps and I really almost like heard it and kind of went back to how it all started. And it's not every day that you get to stop and reflect and look at your whole life in a couple sentences. So thank you so much for getting me present to things that I got present to just now.
That is my absolute pleasure. But I really can't take the credit because that was your journey. That was your work. That's what you did. So
Mhm.
you got yourself to where you are today.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, in case you're still wondering, you might not be, but just in case you are, this podcast is all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether it is directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And no matter what the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way, which typically it tends to remain tucked away for many people. And so this platform that has been created serves in a way to break barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So today, together, you and I, Inga, that hopeful mission that I have is for both of us to be here doing the thing that we're about to do, encouraging people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservation to express. And so that's why I continue to bring forward a trend, which I hope will only continue to grow. And it's called the mental beauty rethink. Inga, what immediately comes to your mind when you hear this phrase, the mental beauty rethink?
What came to my mind just now was how recent experience where I supported someone in the hospital and I got present to me redefining aspects in life that truly matter. So when you say mental rethink, I think of an ability to reframe something in your mind can lead to completely new outcomes and new possibilities in life. And I think it's really powerful to create that kind of foundation where you can step into a new listening of life and who you are in it.
Hmm. I'm really glad that you see it that way as a potential for reframe and what the potential of a reframe can do. And that's exactly it, right? The mental beauty rethink. My aim and hope was always to reframe the way we see mental health.
Hmm. Hmm.
When people hear the words mental health or mental illness or mental wellness, there's this association of something to be good or bad or right or wrong. And for it to be something completely separate from physical health. But mental health or physical health, whatever the health may be, I don't know that we need to always measure it in whether it's good or bad or right or wrong, or that we should be separating and saying mental health is a different department altogether.
Mm.
Right. And so that's kind of what my aim is. And so when you say, yeah, the reframe can lead us to new outcomes and new possibilities, that's exactly the aim, that the new possibilities of thought, the new possibilities to invite and invoke some different ripple effect of thoughts,
Hmm.
of how we're viewing mental health.
Exactly, exactly. And you nailed it when you said that there's some kind of stigma, like it's almost that there is a label around it. I mean, I am in the personal injury field and I'm surrounded by trauma all the time.
Hmm.
Even without getting in car accidents, people have stress and things that they deal with that impacts mental health. Add to it something as traumatic as a motor vehicle accident, and it's like a whole new set of problems. And then we offer psychological assessment to pretty much all our clients. And some clients, they'd be like, well, I don't think that there is something, psychotic with me. And we have to explain it's not about you having psychiatric issues. It's just
Right.
the way that you feel as a result of experiencing, like almost having a PTSD. And then they open up and they're like, oh, yeah, in that case, for sure. Yeah, there is definitely stress. There is definitely anxiety. There is definitely nightmares. And, for me to be around this kind of clearing the space all the time is not always easy either, because the more
Hmm.
you hear other people struggle and suffer, the more you sense their struggle and suffering. I appreciate that there are podcasts like yours where you shine light on the different perspective on mental health.
Right. Well, yeah, and I appreciate that you shared that because that's part of the stigma and the conditioning that people are thinking, I'm not supposed to be in this department, or I'm not supposed to do that, right? So they're misinformed, or there's myths that they're falling into. So this is exactly why this phrase is so important for me to keep spreading into the world and into the communities that we live in.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank
Mhm.
you for doing that.
Thank you. All right, Inga, the time has come. We're
Okay.
about to embark on your journey of questions, of Salima's questions. You ready?
I am ready. My heart is racing and I'm leaning into it.
Okay, then let's go for it. All right. So, our first question, Inga, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
Wow, that's a really great question. The one that evokes a lot of emotions. The headline that I would use, I'm just going to say the first thing that really resonates and that really comes to mind. And it would go something like this: exclamation mark, from journey to impact.
All right. You want to try saying that one more time?
Sure. Exclamation mark, from journey to impact.
All right. Okay, so tell me, Inga, what does this bold headline spark for you?
A road of trials and tribulations,
Hmm.
jumping into new opportunities without knowing what I'm signing up for,
Okay.
and struggling to figure things out along the way, making some mistakes, and then it's like a roller coaster where I was committed to make it,
Hmm.
just to realize there's there's nowhere to be and nowhere to get. And now it's just a process, a joy, not like a reach a finish line
Hmm.
kind of pressure.
Right. Interesting. So this commitment of making it, process of joy, the fear of the unknowns, not knowing what you're signing up for, but going and doing it anyway. That makes a lot of sense based on your
Yeah, right.
title. Yeah. So I want to hear all about your untold story. So give us that skinny. Give us the who, what, when, where.
Okay.
I want to hear it.
Great. I am happy to share. So, a 16-year-old
Hmm.
on the plane from Ukraine to Canada
Right.
by herself with a very minimal knowledge of English language.
Hmm.
When I landed in Toronto, and I had to take a shuttle bus to University of Waterloo, and I fell asleep on the shuttle bus, just like head down on the seat. And then I woke up and they said, like, you arrived.
Right.
And I literally, like, I was drooling on the seat and I opened my eyes. I fell asleep very deeply. And I opened my eyes and I'm like thinking, I arrived? Where? Why?
Hmm.
Now what? I was committed to prove something to myself and to my parents, especially. I wanted to have education here in Canada, yet my English wasn't anything like it is now. And
Right.
also, it wasn't enough to get the university degree. So I ended up signing up for Conestoga College classes. And I was studying English in Conestoga while still trying to do some courses in University of Waterloo. And it was hell. It
Right.
was so hard.
So tell me, so you're 16, you come off a plane, you're coming from Ukraine to Canada, you land in Toronto, you're going to be studying at University of Waterloo. We're learning English at the same time as taking university courses. But what's the untold story part? Tell us more about that.
The untold story would be how much suffering I experienced along the way,
Hmm.
and how much anxiety and this like constant desire to prove myself to someone or something, where it was was what was driving me. So I had it like I was a survivor, like I had to overcome something. Not until many years later, like at least 10 years later, I realized I've done some personal development work and program, and I got that so much of my desire to fit in and all the suffering and all the stress was caused by fear of being judged. And that was a big breakthrough discovery for me, because even though I've graduated from University of Waterloo with 2 degrees,
Mm-hmm.
I would surround myself with people who only spoke Russian to kind of fit in that comfort zone,
Right.
constantly living life, wanting to prove something to someone. It was like I had no choice. It was a blind spot for me where I didn't see it any other way. And then I realized how exhausting it was, and how important it is to, going back to your reframing conversation, to to discover other possibilities that I could have come from. So when all this was happening, I also got in a pretty bad car accident, and that certainly didn't help any overcoming barriers.
Before we talk more about the car accident, which seems like must have been such an intense time for you, you mentioned this desire to fit in, being rooted in fear of being judged. Can you say more about how fear of being judged was showing up for you in the moments when it was showing up? Like, I understand now, at the time you didn't know it was fear of being judged. You were just
Mhm,
operating that way.
mhm, mhm,
And in
mhm,
hindsight,
mhm.
you're like, oh, that's what was happening. But in those moments, without you knowing that it was fear that was kind of rooted there, what was that like for you? Can you give
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
examples?
Great
Yeah.
question. Yes, I'll bring you right to it, as if you're like a fly on the wall watching
Okay. Okay.
how it manifested itself.
Mm-hmm.
I would compare myself to others, and I would feel that I wanted to spend money I didn't have to impress people I didn't know, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And big part of my business was networking.
Mm-hmm.
It's a paramount way to meet people who will refer business to you and be able to work together. And yet I hated going to different events. I hated going to
Mm-hmm.
different meetings. I constantly had it that not only my English wasn't good enough, I also had it like, pretty girl from Ukraine, young. I had to prove that I'm not just a pretty face and I have something to offer that can benefit them and their clients. And it was constantly like in front of me, like some kind of a barrier that I imposed myself
Right.
in my life and in people around me. So networking was not fun for me. And then I'd feel tired and exhausted because you'd have to put on this like fake it until you make it face.
It's very energy zapping, it sounded like, because you couldn't be your authentic self. It almost sounds like you were trying to decode events before they were happening and anticipating all of the things that would be happening and then decode them so that you could be as prepared as possible because your entire mission is I have to prove myself.
Yes, and it was constraining in so many
Mm,
ways. I
right.
would also have this really opportunistic approach to people because I'd see them through the filter of, are you gonna fit some kind of purpose for me? Like
Mm-hmm.
whether you're, I was single at the time, where you're a good looking guy or you're somebody that I can have some potential for relationship with, or either we can connect business wise, or like, what purpose are you going to carry for me?
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing this landmark program. It's the one where you're with a lot of people in the room and you hear their stories, and then something really clicked and resonated. And I realized that I had it because of my desire to prove things. I really got to be number one at a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I had it that I was better than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, back to this thing where I would compare myself to people, and
Mm-hmm.
would downward compare too, would upward and downward
Yeah,
compare.
isn't that interesting how there was this one part of you that basically questioned your self-worth? And then there's another part of you that is operating from like, what value can you provide to me? Like, I am a really important person and my time is valuable and I need to know how you can serve me and I'm really worthy. So how does that work? How did that work for you?
Yeah, that's a really good oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah.
And not only that, but also like, this is almost embarrassing to admit, my vocal cords are not worthy this this conversation.
Mm. So the way someone sounds, if it irritates you or if it sounds professional enough or not, you would be examining all of those pieces too.
Yes, and also it's efforts on my part to speak to you, and if you're not going to serve any value to me, then what's the point for me to
Mm.
use my vocal cords on you, basically? This is what it really comes down to, how little of belonging I felt with the rest of the world.
Hmm. Yeah, how little of belonging you felt in the rest of the world. And so the only way you knew how to operate was through fear. So fear is what showed up in different ways. Fear guyboshed your self-worth, but also gave you a false identity.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. So in the forum, I discovered that there was a really not that traumatic incident that happened in my life that kind of created the stage for the rest of it.
Hmm.
And not until I saw that blind spot and realized all the choices I now have in life, that that kid is no longer driving my life, the one that experienced that event.
Yeah. And I'm sure the more you notice that the new perspectives were showing up and it made more sense, it probably also gave you insight into all of these ways of operating. It really was meant as a way to protect yourself, right? As you navigated all of your path.
Totally.
Fear talks to us in different ways, it signals different things to us. And then it sort of sometimes prompts us to behave in certain ways too.
Yes, big time. It basically dictates the actions
Hmm.
that we will take, and the results that we'll have in life, for sure.
Hmm.
Once I gave up that fear of being judged, gave up a resentment, even toward my own self,
Hmm.
the new life that emerged was just mind blowing. It still is. It's been since 2016 that I can clearly see my life divided from like before and after.
Hmm.
All the possibilities that I missed out on by calculating
Right.
people, whether they derive any value from me. Like, I'm in love with humanity now, and I speak to everybody about anything, and I am so interested in what they have to say. And what I discovered is the contribution that I get to make to them and they get to make to me is nothing even close to how it was when I was calculating things.
Well, yeah, when you're contributing in that way, there's more like relatability and you're more present, right? So if you're more present in the conversation or present with the person, then you're operating from a much more grounded place.
Yeah, it's more than just grounded. It's like I live life as anything possible now,
Hmm.
and anything really is possible.
Right. And believing that.
Yes, believing that, believing in other people before they even believe in themselves.
Sure.
I'm no longer this girl who is driven by desire to prove something to someone. I lead with my heart. The possibilities that life gives as a result of it is nothing I could have ever imagined. Like,
Right.
it's just, it is what it is to live a dream life.
So let's go back to the car accident. When was your car accident? How long ago was that?
It must have been like 2011.
And was it a traumatic accident?
Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard to imagine an accident that's not traumatic unless it's really like drive through and somebody touched your car, but most of them end up being that way. So imagine it's January,
Mm-hmm.
Ukrainian Orthodox Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Driving to my office, just got my manicure done, enjoying the music. All of a sudden, I hear the screeching brakes
Mm,
and the loud noise, and the whole experience was so earth shaking because it was like this really loud sound.
right.
My car is squished between the pillar and an 18 wheeler.
You mean like an 18-wheeler truck?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the truck didn't realize that he has my car on his hood. So
Oh
he
my goodness.
dragged it. Yeah, he dragged it a little further until he hit the pillar with my car being squished between him and the pillar on the highway.
Whoa.
And next thing I know, I am processing what's happening, trying to get out of the car, and the door is stuck, the airbags deployed, and I hear this noise. It was one of the most unforgettable noises I've ever had, where the police officers were cutting the door to get me out and put me on the stretcher.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing I know, I am in the hospital. I felt just beyond exhausted. Everything was like in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
The head was pounding. I couldn't move my neck. I had a neck brace.
What kind of injuries did you sustain, if you don't mind me asking?
Thankfully, it was soft tissue injury,
Okay.
although the pain lingered for a long time. But the biggest one was a concussion.
Right.
And I remember struggling with remembering what I wanted to say. I had some memory lapses from what happened like years before the accident.
Right.
And also, if I wanted to say something, I wanted to write it down. So I remembered what I wanted to say. And by the time that I finished the sentence, I would forget what I started to write down. So that was frustrating. I felt helpless. And at that time, I was already not as deep, but somewhat part of personal injury world
Mm-hmm.
because I was a secretary at a rehabilitation clinic that supports people after car accidents
Right.
that I now lead and am a CEO of.
Right. And so you gave such a description of what happened in the accident. Tell me about the impact of this accident. What sort of repeat themes came up for you from all the other parts of your journey that you have already shared?
The biggest one was that I was set back to square one and almost like, do I start over? I wasn't able to perform. I'm a high performer person, no matter whether I was stuck in my previous point of view or whether I'm unleashed here in my current. I love being in action. So I felt constrained and debilitated. The loss of enjoyment of life, the lack of support. I never had any family here.
Solo. Yeah, solo. And there was no family that joined you later at any point?
Never.
You're a high performer, felt constraint, debilitated, you're by yourself.
I had support, thank
Okay.
God. And
Okay.
this support is what really, really made a big difference for me to be where I am now, to be who I am now. Because if it wasn't for the support of the team that I now lead, I don't know how I would have gotten through this.
Right.
My current business partners were a really helping hand. At that time, they were my bosses, and my team also really stood that I got therapy and treatment. We even considered sending me away to just kind of change the scenery to this like retreat.
Like a rehabilitation retreat sort of place?
Sort of, just
Okay.
something like almost mental. I wasn't comfortable driving at all. I was so afraid to be around trucks for
Mhm.
a long time. It was just an experience that shook me to the core.
Mm-hmm.
And not being able to express myself, as you can imagine, was really frustrating as well, because here I am trying to communicate with people that I see as my support and struggling to remember words to use.
Right. The memory lapses were interfering. And I'm curious if you had, surpassed so much in life, like you moved through so much tumult, and then this accident happens, and this idea that was in your mind, like I'm at square one. Did you start questioning yourself, like in terms of maybe I'm not invincible, like maybe I can't do this? Like I wonder if there was any
Mm.
chatter that was happening in the back of your mind. Maybe not those particular phrases, but I'm just curious if there was anything like that.
Let me just give me a moment. Let me actually bring myself back to that girl who was confined on for a few weeks at least. I wasn't leaving my place very often. I felt lonely. I really felt lonely. Like, yes, I
Mhm.
got support from my team at the workplace, but not having family and not having too many friends. It also happened right after my breakup with the ex partner that I was with. It was tough
Right,
to feel this breakdown in
right.
so many ways. What I question myself in, the big one that I can think of right now, was whether I'd be able to drive again.
Mm,
Like, that fear was paralyzing.
yeah. Will I ever be able to drive again?
Yeah, and it's like, am I really safe? I barely slept because I had, when you have a concussion, it really messes up your head. And
Yes.
I had this dream. It was like a lucid dream where I would wake up and then just to realize that I'm still in a dream, having a dream in a dream in a dream. And that was exhausting, because not only I wouldn't get sleep, I was afraid to fall asleep because it was so scary
Right.
to not know what the night will bring. And of course, nausea and not being able to take care of yourself. I mean, yeah, it was quite an ordeal to overcome.
It sounds definitely that it was challenging, and the difficulties were there was such a wide array from physical symptoms that you had to endure, as well as all this emotional side and it affecting and impacting your mental well-being. And also just recognizing that, you were grateful that they were soft tissue injuries aside the concussion. But something I'm sure that you're so familiar with is that soft tissue injuries are complicated to treat. And there's a lot of physical pain, and it's very difficult and frustrating for the individual who has been injured because it's so hard to look at the progression. And the last thing a person who's been injured wants to hear is, oh, it's just soft tissue.
Oh my gosh, you're so on point with this.
It's like if you break an arm, there's a process of fixing it, right? You put a person in a cast, right? Or, there's obviously some other diagnostics, and then they get in a cast, the cast is removed, and there's some rehabilitation, some particular exercises, process, treatment in place, and then strength training, and there's a whole slew. But with soft tissue, the body reacts differently. Things are up, things are down, there's inflammation, there's this happening, that happening, and it looks so different for each individual.
And in addition to it, it radiates in your body. So you may start feeling pain in one place, and then all of a sudden,
You might not even experience the same feeling all the time. Like it changes, right?
yes, yes. And if you're going through a personal injury claim where it's almost like you got to prove to insurance companies that what you feel is what you feel.
That it's real and you're not making it up. And so that's a job on its own. So,
Yeah.
what gets me really curious is previous to your car accident, you were living this life of, I need to prove myself. And now you're in this post car accident time period, and you're having to say to yourself, I need to prove that I'm injured. Some people tell me who've had accidents, they tell me, like, it's almost like I have to prove that I'm injured. So it's hard to focus on getting better sometimes because you're trying so hard to let people know that you're injured, but I don't want that to affect my rehabilitation process.
So true for a lot of people. I talk to just thousands of people who are going through various experiences, from the most minor to the most catastrophic injuries.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that I had it like I needed to prove that
Okay.
I'm injured, probably because the concussion was enough. And also
Yeah.
back then, it was just that brink of legislation change where you had to work. Now you have to work much harder to show the reason why you're entitled to have a settlement and the claim and all this. So it was more about proving that I have what it takes to continue.
Okay.
It was triggering to be around people who were constantly in car accidents.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where
Right.
I am so grateful for the current experience of life and mindset, because now I look back at it and I see it as a blessing in disguise.
Right.
I didn't get on the other side and experience this whole journey firsthand. I don't know what I probably wouldn't have been as driven and as passionate and as capable and knowledgeable to be able to orchestrate the kind of support that I do now for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
It's that incident, that accident that cultivated my unapologetic passion to make a difference for personal injury victims,
Right.
to the extent that we now created a support group, Canada Support for Motor Vehicle Accidents. Like, I live to be of service to those who are injured, given what I went through myself.
Right. And that's fabulous. So, Inga, when people come to see me for therapy, individuals, they're typically in one of three places. Some people are getting started, they're trying to make sense of where they are in life, or they know there's a particular area that needs to really get unpacked. Some people are in the middle where they're sorting through a lot of different things, or there's something that's acute that's triggered things from the past. They need some support navigating that. Or some people are looking back. They're looking for closure, or they're looking how their personal growth, and they're working on different puzzle pieces of their life so that they can move forward. So for yourself, what part of the journey you would say you are in based on the sharing of your story that you've shared so far today? Would you say that you are getting started, in the middle, or looking back?
In relation to the journey, I'd say I'm looking back.
Mm-hmm.
However, I am in the phase of getting started on a new chapter in my life.
Okay. So in terms of the piece of looking back from all of the things that, you've shared up until this point, what do you want to remember about the process of your healing journey so that you can remind yourself you're looking back?
The first thing that came to mind is the difference that support makes. That I'm never alone, even when it felt like I was really lonely, especially on various holidays and not having a family here. I now see that I was never alone. And another one is making myself a victim was the kind of mindset that caused all the suffering.
Right.
So I now live life looking at it this way: pain may be inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Mm. Say that part again. I think people need to hear it.
Pain may be inevitable,
Mm-hmm.
but suffering is optional. And you can choose what you will focus on and what kind of interpretation you give to your story. And one of the biggest things that I really love about this podcast, that I'm sharing this story, it's true, it is a story, and I get to rewrite this story newly, because the interpretation I give to the story is my own point of view.
Sure.
And whether it serves me or not, back in those days, if I had the tools and the mindset and the power that I do now, I could have looked at the same situation and I would not have been a victim. I would have been at the source of circumstances and events, and that would have been empowering.
Mm-hmm. These are great rememberings. Yeah, these are really great rememberings to help keep you in line with, yeah, I'm looking back. There's things I've let go of, and there's things that I can take forward with me to keep me on this path.
And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for everything that I wouldn't change a thing. There are some choices I made that I would never make now, and there are people I hurt along the way, and I've restored the relationship with those people too. Anything is possible, and just being grateful for what led me to where I am now is how I feel.
Wonderful. Okay, so Inga,
Mhm.
really curious about how your untold story has affected your mental health. I understand at the time you might not have known exactly that your mental health was even impacted, but knowing what you know now, how would you say your mental health was affected during the time of all of this upheaval that you've been sharing with us today?
Well, it's hard to imagine how it wasn't affected. I think it was affected on like every possible level. I would feel sorry for myself. I would cry. I would blame others. I would uh, I would feel stressed. I would feel disempowered, hard to sleep, and then be tired the next day, lose interest in what's important, these frivolous and surface level things. Like I could have read more books instead of partying with my girlfriends. And once again, like I don't regret it. It is how it went.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I can tell that it was it was weakening my mental health.
So when you say you were feeling stressed and disempowered, was it because of thoughts that you were telling yourself, or were there certain emotions that you, really big emotions that you were experiencing?
I really felt stuck,
Hmm.
and I didn't know how to feel unbridled happiness. Like I would feel joyous at the moment. Let's say like shopping therapy. I'd go and spend a lot of money to buy things, and at the moment it felt great. And then there would be a buyer's remorse, and like, oh my gosh, it was like a vicious cycle that just kept feeding these thoughts of like I don't belong.
Okay. So the vicious cycle just kept you in a loop, feeling stuck and making the same choices and in hopes to feel something different. We know that an impulse shopping trip is not actually true happiness, right? There's just,
Mhm.
it's just like a instant gratification with lots of consequences and usually not really the emotion you're wanting to experience. So it sounds like you're also saying like I didn't even know how to feel what I was feeling. Like there was so much going on. It sounds like part of you was escaping from all of the heaviness.
I was trying to escape from my own self. Oh, here's another one. So my parents divorced when I was like 9 years old, and they made sure that they had beautiful, very friendly relationship, which is great. And I thought that that's the way to go, and I'm totally not impacted by their divorce. Yet I had four different houses where I lived,
Hmm.
alternating between the houses, my two grandmothers and mother and father, and it was like living in a chaos, and I constantly had this need to switch places. I would move like almost every year. It's
Hmm.
almost like no matter where I was, I didn't feel at home.
Hmm.
And when you said like you were trying to escape, it was like just looking for another place to find home without being at home with myself.
Right. So it's like a learned pattern. Like the whole four houses and your parents divorcing and living that life of chaos was a different part of your life, but you learned that at the time that's the feeling you were experiencing, right? Like no matter where I live, I don't feel at home. And so that same feeling was kind of haunting you or kind of re-triggered by like, no matter what I do, I don't really feel like myself. I'm not at peace with myself. So
Constantly chasing something.
chasing, I was just going to say, it's like this chase of something that you don't know what you're chasing, right?
Yeah, very true. And that caused some drama in my life as well. And then I realized that, like, wow, I was such a drama queen.
Mm-hmm.
These tears and the upsets that I've put myself through, and all this. It's just like looking at it right now. I feel that I was quite lost.
Right. So tell me, Inga, what is your key message to the listeners of our show?
Number one is take a bird's eye view on any situation and look at it as, okay, so this is a story. This may not be what's happening right now. This is just my interpretation. So uncollapsing that story and what is happening is really a key to looking at life newly. And I want to say this is it.
Mm-hmm.
This is your life. Whether you like it, whether you happy how it turned out or not, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not your practice life. It's
Right.
not your practice marriage. It's not your practice job or career or relationship. This is it. So just go and make the most of it. Give it your all. Give it
Right.
all your love. Give it all your heart and give it all your purpose. Whatever your
Mm-hmm.
purpose is, just go after it.
That's a great message. Take a bird's eye view
Hmm.
and give it your all. And this is not your practice life. These are really key, important messages. So I'm curious then if you can share, what is that game changing inspiration that's close to you that reflects your untold story? So, what were you relying on? Was there like an inspirational quote or book or speaker or person or event or something that really, once you were introduced to it, like it's that thing that kept you going? What was the inspiration for you?
Landmark Forum.
Yeah.
Yeah, Landmark Forum was the beginning of my new life for sure. It
Okay.
was the possibilities that I invented, the possibility of being courageous, trusting myself and the outcome, and being loved.
Hmm.
This personal development program really empowers people to create breakthroughs in their lives that they never thought they were capable of.
So, tell me, what is a cause or an organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to? Who might they be?
Oh my gosh, I love IWB, Immigrant Women in Business. Their mandate, their mission, their drive is everything that I embody now. And that's love, unity, inclusion, diversity, all the events that I go to that I'm honored to be part of. And
Mm-hmm.
what they do for communities cannot be said enough in words. So definitely a shout out to IWB. I love them. I love being part of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And my husband, even though it's not an organization.
Wonderful. So, how can people connect with you if they would like to, if they've been inspired by some of the things that you've shared today? How are you findable?
Uh, I'm a very public person. My LinkedIn is Inga Tkachenko Ramage. Yeah, I'm a public person. I'm happy to be of service and to be found. I have a website. I have launching a YouTube channel. I have Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And my website is ingatr.ca.
Amazing. Wonderful. Well, we have grabbed all of that information, so it should all be up on the show notes page for your episode. So anyone who wants to know can just click on your name and they'll be able to see all the ways they can connect with you. Thank you. So, Inga,
Yes.
guess what?
Do tell.
You've just dared yourself to share. Congratulations.
Wow. Yeah, I feel dared.
Yeah. Yeah. Inga, I would just like to take a moment to express my gratitude for the deep story shared in this space today. I appreciate the rawness in your sharing today, from discussing elements of being a solo immigrant to the unexpected life choices along the way, to finding your balance of control and flow, and even the trauma and impact of an 18-wheeler truck accident. Your story is such an important one to share and to be heard, as it will encourage others to recognize their own journey.
Thank you.
I am so grateful to have been able to hear and witness your story today. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Salima. It was a privilege. I acknowledge you for taking it on and creating a podcast that is going to create a ripple effect in people's lives by resonating with them about what other people are dealing with or dealt with.
Aw, thank you, and wonderful. So once again, Inga, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.